It is 12. And so for those of you who've not been to one of these before, these are done virtually and in person. So as I'm talking and showing my screen, there are people watching from home. That's why I'm kind of talking dually here. And so if I talk to people in the room, the people who are watching at home cannot hear you guys ask questions. So if you ask a question or make a comment, I will repeat that for the people who are online watching us. So without further ado, we will go ahead and get started in our new room. Welcome to Houseplant Academy, Growing Successful Succulents and Cacti. If you've done this before, I have done this topic before, and this is a similar presentation, but I have added things to it because not everybody saw the first one, so I didn't want to leave all that information out. At the same time, I didn't want it to be redundant and have the same old, so we beefed it up as well. So Lisa's still letting people in. And while she's doing that, I will tell you about the next Houseplant Academy we're going to have. So this is going to be a little bit different. This is a Kokedama workshop, and this is one in which you do pay, but it's very minimal. It's $10. So if it's free if you watch it online, it's $10 if you come in person, but you get all the supplies. So you will learn how to make a Kokedama, and you will actually leave with a Kokedama that day. So basically you're paying the $10 for the plant, the soil, the moss, all of it.
We just pay you then.
No, you'll register online and pay when you register, is my understanding. Yeah. Oh, really? Did you register for online or in person? Oh, okay. Well, I will inquire about that because we set it up so that people can just pay online through Destiny One, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was a glitch. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Okay. All right. So.
Only question, what is coconut?
So a Kokedama is this lovely little moss ball. It's here in this picture. So it's a way of growing a plant not in a pot. You basically put it in moss with soil and wrap it with wire, like fishing wire, and you can hang it and it just grows in the little, it's very cute, very pretty, very fun.
What?
It's kind of, it is, but it isn't. It's like an air plant in the sense that it's just hanging up and it's not in a pot, but its roots are not exposed. So the roots are in the soil.
So you call that an air plant?
No, we don't call it an air plant. We call it just a Kokedama. Yeah. And so if you ever go to like Lowe's or Home Depot, they typically have these for sale with orchids, and you will see some roots on the outside because it's an orchid. It grows differently than most plants. But yeah, if you wanted to see an example of one live, but of course I will have one that day and I'll be showing you how to make it. We're going to have guys to put in for your own little Kokedama if you wish. So hopefully you will join me for that. That's in July. Also wanted to give a plug to the Southeast Plant Show. Now, this is not something that is put on by Extension or put on by me. This is put on by actually one of our master gardeners who has done this for 4 or 5 years now. But if you're into, if you're into houseplants at all, if you love buying houseplants, if you just like to look at them, you must come to the Southeast Plant Show because it is just, it's amazing. I can't even put into words how much fun the Southeast Plant Show is. And we'll have a booth. So I'll be there with some master gardeners. We'll be answering plant care questions. But just to go and look around, I mean, you have everything from people selling things for, $10, $15, all the way up into the thousands. I mean, there are collectors there buying rare hybrids of everything you can imagine. So definitely check it out. I know some of you have been there. It's a definite, people watching and plant watching. Yeah, for sure.
You'll see colors of hair you never imagined.
Right.
And it costs money.
Yeah, you do have to pay admission. It's not free to go. You can go online. You can buy a 1-day ticket or a 2-day ticket. I think it's like $15 for 1 day, $25 for 2 day. VIP is like $100, but you get all kinds of extra things. You don't have to do that. If you're a master gardener, you can volunteer to work the booth and not have to pay admission. So just something to think of. Okay, so what are succulents? I think most people know by looking at a plant whether it's a succulent, but the definition is it's a drought-resistant plant that has adapted to dry environments, environments that are arid. They store their water in their leaves, stems, and roots, which causes them to look fleshy. And so what are the benefits of even having a succulent? They're great for a person who travels frequently. They're great for a person who just can't keep up with their regular houseplants. Even if you are wonderful at houseplant care, you might just really enjoy the look of them. They really bring unique, like artistic beauty and structure in ways that other houseplants do not. And you can do so many clever crafts with them too. Like you can You don't have to have a perfect environment. They last for months. I honestly recommend most times to people getting a bunch of succulents instead of fresh flowers because they will last for a few months with really no care whatsoever if you want to have a display in your home. So they also improve indoor air just like other plants. A lot of them have medicinal properties like aloe. So they're just a great variety of plant to grow in your home. So what are their succulent native range and why should you care about that? So something that I have learned in learning about horticulture and plants is it's actually really helpful if you know where your plant originally came from when you're trying to figure out how to care for it. One of the first things I learned in horticulture school actually was this. Figure out where the plant comes from and what the environment is like there, and it will give you so many clues as to how to care for it with water and temperature and all of that. So primarily Southern Africa and the Americas where you'll find these succulents. They like high temperatures, low rainfall, dry air. Most of us have really dry indoor air in our homes. I know especially with the AC running or with the drought, it's been so dry in my home. Perfect for your succulents. They like sandy, rocky, or soil that drains quickly. They're often found tucked between rocks or rocky crevices, which gives them shelter from brutal sunlight. So the pretty ones that have the little rosettes, they don't want to be in the blasting, blazing sun. They like a little bit of shelter. So how do you care for these succulents? The soil you can grow in your own pre-bagged, or you can grow in pre-bagged succulent mix from a store. And I actually have a bag of it here for you guys to look at. One that I really like is the Miracle Grow Indoor Potting Mix for cacti and succulents. You can also make your own. It's way easier than you might think. Don't be intimidated. You just get regular houseplant mix and you mix that with some sand or perlite or pumice or fine gravel to make it nice and gritty and allow that water to drain. It's perfect for those plants. They need very little water or fertilizer, but they need a lot of light. So if you're planning to some succulents and grow them for the long term, you do want to give them a lot of light. If you want to have just a pretty succulent arrangement for a few months in your home and you don't have much light and you're okay with treating them like an annual, by all means, you can do that. You don't have to worry about, sticking them somewhere that's kind of dark. They're not going to keep growing. They're not going to survive indefinitely, but they will give you a pretty show for a few months. So you can use the sunlight you get indoors, artificial grow lights, and also make sure you rotate plants to prevent lopsided growth. As a matter of fact, we have a huge aloe upstairs on our floor that I wanted to bring down here for you guys to see. But it really has outgrown its pot, and it is so lopsided. Every time I tried to lift it, it practically jumped from its pot. So that's a do not do this scenario. Don't let it get to the point where it's completely growing over on one side because it hasn't been rotated, or it's so root bound that it can't be moved without flopping out. So as far as watering, succulents need to be watered weekly during spring and fall, approximately every 2 to 3 weeks in fall and winter. I kind of eyeball this for myself and kind of judge what's going on in the environment. If it's been super dry and it looks like it could use some water, if the leaves are getting a little shrivelly or shrinky, I know it could use some water. You don't want to give it too much water. They do not like an excess of water. They don't want to sit in water. The root ball will get root rot if it does sit in water. You want to make sure you have a pot that has a drainage hole. Preferably terracotta, because terracotta is wonderful at wicking that water away and allowing that to evaporate. So definitely something that's kind of a misconception about watering succulents too is that you only want to give them a little sip of water. It's actually not at all what I do. I take my plant, I put it under the sink or the hose or whatever, and I just drench it and let the water run out the bottom, make sure it all gets dried out, and then I leave it for a few months. And you're mimicking basically a naturally occurring rainfall in its own environment. So you're not wanting to leave those leaves wet. You don't want water collecting on the top where it's going to sit and rot, but you're oil just like it would in a rainstorm, and then you're leaving it alone for a few months. Okay, it just depends. I mean, it really depends. It's when people ask questions like how often should I water my plant, it always depends. It depends on how big's the plant, what kind of pot is it in, what's the light situation, because the more light means more water, less light, less water. What's your humidity situation? All those things. So you really have to kind of look at all of that and make your decision. So for a container for succulents, one of the things I love best about these, you can get very creative. Now, obviously, a typewriter or a mug isn't going to have a drainage hole specifically for planting a plant, But you can put little plastic nursery pots in things, in just really anything, and just take that plastic nursery pot out, water the plant, and then put it back in your display, your vessel, and use it. How to be so creative with these. I really like that. Also, humidity, they love the humidity indoors, which is very dry. They don't want to be in a wet, tropical, moist environment that's going to cause them to rot or shrivel up, and you don't want that. So they're really, really perfect for indoors. If you've ever tried to grow a fern indoors and realize how stressful that is trying to keep the humidity right, you don't have to worry about the humidity with these succulents. So fertilizing. If you buy some cacti or succulent fertilizer, they will tell you on the label, individually based on that particular brand of fertilizer, how often to fertilize it, how much. What we usually say is to fertilize them with that type of fertilizer, succulent specific, but do it at half to a quarter rate listed on the label. And why do we say that? That's because when plants are in the nursery trade, they're being fed fertilizer constantly to push out new growth, to look really beefy and good for sales. But that plant material is considered soft material. They call it soft because it's been babied so much with so much fertilizer. You want to let it harden up a little bit, get a little tougher, not give it, every single thing it wants every second and more, or overlove it. So giving it a half to a quarter rate of the fertilizer actually tries to mimic a more natural and more resilient. That's an important thing to do. You can just know that your plant's going to be probably a little tougher with the fertilizer. So it wants a lot of air circulation. This goes back to the humidity thing. They want the dry soils. They want lower humidity. They don't want it to be in a stagnant area. It also reduces your risk of pests like mealybugs and spider mites. Don't crowd too many plants close together. A little fan is nice to help that. The more that you have your plants wet or moist, it's going to kind of like lay out a welcome mat for pests, and you don't want that. So planting and repotting succulents, they don't need to be repotted very often, which is also nice for the person who doesn't want to have to do a lot of high maintenance, hands-on care for their plants. Avoid overly large containers. If you put an aloe, because it's got big leaves but a small root ball, in a big, swimming pot of soil, it's going to lead it to get root rot. It's not going to be happy. You're never going to get the watering right because the water's going to come off of the root ball but be sitting in all this soil. So really tailor your pot to the size of the root ball for your plant. Be careful not to break the stems or leaves. It's kind of an obvious one. Remove soil from the root ball. So whenever you do repot your succulent, take all that soil off the root ball and put it in fresh. You're giving it a whole new fresh environment, fresh soil, freshly fertilized soil. Typically, any chance of pests or anything that could be possibly lingering in there, you're getting rid of that and getting it fresh. Like I said, they have relatively few pest issues. Most have to do with overwatering or not enough light. And I have had mealybugs happen on succulents before. Usually it's when I bring them in for the winter. As long as you treat it early, you can get a hold. We have a question?
When you said remove the soil from the root ball, just by hand, or should you wash it off?
Okay, so we had someone ask about removing soil from the root ball. Do you do that by hand or do you wash it off? And really either way, it kind of depends. Like if you can rinse it off, that's great. You don't want to put the wet root in wet soil. So that's something to consider. If you're going to put it right in dry soil, I wouldn't necessarily water it for a little while because the roots would then be wet. If you're doing it by hand, then you might be able to go ahead and water it. So just it depends on how you're going to care for it afterwards. It's not going to harm it if you take the hose to the roots. You just don't want to keep it soaking like that. Keep it drenched. Okay, common and most top 60 plant families and thousands of hybrids. I'm sure if you've ever been to a nursery or who hasn't been to a Walmart or a Lowe's and seen all the different types. Jade, Hayworthia, Aloe, Crassula, Echeveria, which is extremely beautiful. I have a few different varieties here with me today for the people who are here in person, and I also have some cuttings everyone can take of these plants. So that's a benefit to coming in person, as you do, not always, but typically get something to take home with you. I say when it comes to buying and choosing succulents, get what looks good and what's pretty and what you're want very similar care. Again, most popular, I say Echeveria is the first, and I think it's just a beautiful, everyone likes the look of the Echeveria. Large succulent, it's in this pretty rosette shape. It's native to semi-desert areas in Mexico and the Americas. Most of them will stay small, but some of them are really large. I think I brought one. Yeah, I did. I brought one today that's much as across. It just depends on the variety, the hybrid, and also the light situation. So, for example, I brought, you'll see that they come in many different colors, blue, gray, silver, green, pink. I brought one that's mostly green and it's been indoors all winter. And now that I've started putting it outside, the tips are getting to be that pink again. And that's really what you want. You want those, the pretty contrast of the tips and that light. When you bring your Echeveria in for the winter and it dulls to just a plain color, it's fine. It's not being harmed, but it's not going to give you the pretty show that you're looking for. So just keep that in mind. Don't let water sit in that rosette center. That's going to give it root rot or just rot the leaves. It'll give you mushy little leaves that you have to pluck out of there and just ruin the overall appearance of your plant. Always remove the dead leaves from the bottom because you kind of prune from the bottom with this. It grows up. If your plant looks like a tufted stem, sometimes you'll get just like this long stem with just this tuft and it's not growing out well, cut the stem and replant it. It'll grow new roots. These are very okay. So Echeveria, hennin chicks, and sedums. A lot of people ask me, they show one, they think it's the other. So just so you know, the hennin chicks refers to the sempervivum, and everybody's seen those growing in those strawberry pots. The hen comes from the main plant, and the chicks are the little plantlets that form around the plant. Echeveria is the large group of succulents with foliage in a rosette. So it's a little bit different. Like I said, I have one here today. Most stay small, reaching only a couple of inches across. And then the sedums, I'm sure you've seen sedum as a ground cover sold at many nurseries. They also have leaves arranged in a rosette shape, and they range from just a few inches to 3 feet tall. They can also be trailing, so they can be very nice. Just when you're buying your plants, look at the Latin name on there. It'll tell you which one they are and give you a lot of information just based on that. Okay, so aloe. I brought an aloe today, native to the Arabian Peninsula. Allow the soil to dry out completely between waterings, which I do. Make sure the container has drainage holes. That's a must. The plant will produce offsets, little pups. So if you see, I think the one I have here did the same thing. It starts growing and all of a sudden you see a little baby plant coming up on the outside of it or the side of it. You can pluck that right off, plant it in another pot, and you have another plant. So don't be afraid just to split it apart. It's not going to hurt it. So aloe is used medicinally for sunburns and cuts and abrasions. Actually, our fax agent, Inez, was telling me this morning that she's been using the aloe leaf juice for her stomach. She's been having, stomach upset. And taking the aloe juice, you've probably seen the huge leaves for sale in the produce department. People will put them in smoothies and things just to help settle their stomach. It's one of those things where you don't want to go crazy and put a ton of aloe in there if you're not used to it. So use caution, but a little bit can go a long way. So jade, this is a very popular plant, probably one of the most popular for people to keep indoors because it's kind of hard to kill, considered hard to kill. Native to Southern Africa. The Khoi and other Africans used the roots for food. They grated and cooked them and ate them with the thick milk. They also use the leaves for medicinal purposes. So I would not go to a nursery or a big box store and take a jade plant and eat that root because it's been treated for, the landscape industry, for the houseplant industry. It's not been treated like a food item. So I wouldn't try to duplicate that at home. But it is something that when grown in its natural environment can be used in that way. Does great in containers, pretty slow growing, tolerates neglect, which is great for all of us with busy lives, which who doesn't have a busy life. Likes the warm, dry environment indoors and the bright indirect light, but it can tolerate low light. So, it may not look as bright on the tips there or as vibrant, but it'll still be alive and still be growing in low light. So that's a nice thing to know. The Kalanchoe. This is native to Madagascar. It's got those dark green, thick scallop leaves with the 4-petaled flowers. This is one that I think is kind of taken over as far as being a grocery store gift plant. Every single holiday, every single occasion, you'll see little ceramic planters with these kalanchoes in all different colors, you know, from magenta to orange and pink. They're very cute and they're very easy to care for. They love the bright indoor light. Of course, like any succulent, they don't want to be overwatered. Fertilize them while they're blooming because that's when they need that energy to produce those blooms. And the cool night temperatures will prolong the life of your kalanchoe. And they're very similar to poinsettias. If you want yours to rebloom, you have to give it what you would give a poinsettia. So you want those long, dark nights, the cool temperatures, mimic that for approximately 6 weeks, and then you will get some more flower buds. So do it like you do your poinsettia and you'll have blooms again. Sansevieria. So this one is technically now called Dracaena. I still like to call it Sansevieria. Yeah, the plant, what do you want to call them? The plant, the horticulture experts who do this type of thing, who look at the cells and the history and the DNA of plants, they look at the genetic, I guess, information, have discovered that this is actually a part of the Dracaena family. Dracaena being like Janet Craig, the corn plant you probably are familiar with. So a lot of times now when you go to the store to buy one of these, it'll say Dracaena in the Latin name instead of Sansevieria. But if you say Sansevieria, people know what you're talking about. I prefer it because if you say Dracaena, I don't know if you mean the snake plant or if you mean all the other types of Dracaena. But if you say Sansevieria, I know you're talking about a snake plant. Anyway, can survive in low light, but it really does great in bright indirect light. Doesn't mind being root bound. You know, I have a few that I put outside this spring that had been root bound all winter, and they had grown so many more offshoots, and just, you know, they looked like they were so crowded in their pots, but they're still growing. And when I repotted them, I just pulled those other little plants apart, put them in their own pots, and they heal on their own. They will do well. Dust your leaves occasionally. They can get very dusty compared to other plants because of their upright structure. That really does affect its ability to photosynthesize, and it affects your indoor air quality if you have all this dust on your plants. If a leaf gets damaged, you just cut it off at the bottom. No big deal. Fertilize it during the growing season at half strength, and then it will bloom. Mine bloom every year, every summer when I put them out. But I have them on the south side of my house, which is, of course, the most sun, and it's brick that they're against, so they're a little more sheltered, and I think that gives them just the right conditions. Now, if you put it outside on a north or maybe even an east facing, you probably won't get a bloom. You may. South facing, though, I've never had a disappointment. So Haworthia, this is a really very versatile one, a very nice gifty plant too. I see this in all those little ceramic containers for the different holidays. It's very closely related to aloe family, and you can kind of see that in its growth habit. Its clumping typically stays 2 to 12 inches. They're very small, very cute, all kinds of different colors from greens to reds to near black. The leaves can be thick and smooth or covered in stripes such as this one, or those tubercles, which are the small wart-like protrusions, or they can be transparent. You'll see all kinds of different types. They're non-toxic to pets and humans, so if you've got cats or dogs who might want to mess with your plant and you're worried about that, they might tear it up, but if you're worried about them getting poisoned, they won't. They can tolerate the low light conditions like many other succulents. These actually, even though the prevailing wisdom is to always grow a succulent in a pot with a drainage hole, I have a few of these that are in pots that do not have drainage holes that I water so sparingly that it is not an issue. I actually have these syringes that I got from Walgreens when my kids were little. When you buy medicine, liquid medicine, they give you the little tiny syringes, and I have those still. I fill a syringe. I just point that syringe at the soil whenever I think about it, which is not very often, and they do not get root rot, and it's just fine. I would never take a Haworthia that was in a pot without a drainage hole and put it under my sink to water. That would be a disaster. But taking a syringe like that, if you want to do that and give it that extra care, you absolutely can. It'll work. So they do best in east or west facing windows. I don't put this in my southern facing windows. It's too much. You can kind of tell by the coloration of that it doesn't want that extreme sun. It could tolerate a south facing window if you had sheer curtains between to kind of provide a little diffusion of that light. String of pearls. So these are so pretty. Everybody's always fascinated whenever these are at plant sales, I've noticed. They're native to South Africa. They look like little small peas. They can grow to 3 feet long. They're very beautiful in a hanging basket. They actually do best in a hanging basket because of the drainage issue. They want that bright light, infrequent watering, and the well-draining soil. Don't be putting them in, your Miracle-Gro moisture-saving soil. They do not want that. Got to be in something for cacti and succulents. They like to be in shallow containers. They don't want to float around in a large volume of soil that will stay wet. Clay containers, of course, are always better because they do better at wicking that water away. Better than ceramic as well. So I would say that just in looking at my succulents, I have some in ceramic pots just because they look nice. I like the look of it, and some of them are just pretty like that. But I do notice that the ones I have in terracotta do better. It just mimics the environment much better for them. Repot every year or two, fertilize lightly in spring. Spring is usually when you want to fertilize everything because things are, the sun's increasing, their plants are getting going. Then you kind of taper back in fall and winter. The leaves are slightly toxic, so if you've got a pet who might want to eat these, keep it away. Rarely flowers indoors, but it may flower outdoors. And I've seen these actually flowering in nurseries. So I'm sure that at Pike or wherever I've been where they've had them in flower, it's because they've gotten so much sun and so much warmth, way more than you would get obviously in a home environment. That's why they're blooming. But it does happen. String of hearts. And my string of hearts today for people who are here in person, but these are so cute. They're so delicate looking. They are tender, succulent, evergreen perennial that has trailing branches that resembles a string of beads. They're heart-shaped leaves that are dark green and etched with silver on the upper and purple on the underside. They occur about every 3 inches along the stem, and the beads, which are sometimes called, rosary beads, they're aerial tubers or tubercles, and they form on the stems between the leaves. And so if you see those on your plant, it actually is indicative of a healthy plant. It's not a problem. It's not something that when I first saw them, I thought, oh no, what is this? And then I researched it and I said, oh, this is actually a good thing. So monitor for aphids, mealybugs, and scale. Again, as I think I've said for every plant here, overwatering can cause root rot. Underwatering can cause shriveled leaves, so you do have to find that sweet spot. But once you find it, it's really they're not that difficult to take care of. I find that they like to be drenched in the sink and allowed to drain and then left alone for a long period of time. So grow in a west or east facing window, fertilize it infrequently. During the growing season, of course, we'd like you to use the half strength or quarter strength fertilizer just because you're going to make a tougher plant that way. And it likes to be crowded in its pot, doesn't like to swim in a bunch of soil. String of bananas and string of dolphins. These are cute. There's also a string of turtles, which I didn't mention, but they look just like their description looks like a dolphin, looks like a banana. The care is just the same as the string of hearts. And so these are a lot of fun. They're great for hanging baskets. And I would say in spring and summer, go ahead and buy one. If you've not had success growing one of these in your home, try putting it outdoors in the spring and summer, and you probably will have great success because the temperatures and the light situation will give it a much better shot. Okay, so propagation. There are many different ways to do this, and actually it's very easy. I was mentioning to you how I can actually propagate them when I cut them and I hot glue them to my different crafts and they form the aerial roots. I can take them off and the hot glue dries and I just throw away the hot glue that's dried and I just put them in soil and they keep going. So I say that to say they're very hardy and they're very resistant to abuse. So offsets and divisions. If it produces clusters of rosettes or pups or has those runners, it's a good candidate for that method of propagation. And actually, I brought some mother of millions today. It's a type of kalanchoe that you guys can take. You'll just lay those on soil. When the roots get a little more, they'll just grow right into the soil and grow for you. So very easy that way. Pot up in well-draining soil, keep lightly watered, and roots will establish in a few weeks. The ones I brought today actually already have roots on them. So if you just set them on some moist soil, they'll just grow right into it. Stem cuttings, you'd remove a section of the stem 3 to 6 inches long and take the leaves from the lower half. If you've ever put together a flower bouquet, or say you've cut some flowers from your garden to put in a vase, you always cut off those bottom leaves and bottom flowers. You don't want a bunch of stuff sticking in the water. Similar concept with taking these cuttings. You don't want a bunch of leaves all the way down to the bottom. You want to have some space on the stems, like in dry for a few. I'm just laying it there. Basically, I just put it on the table or a plate or whatever, and just allow roots to form and kind of leave it alone. And then when I see the roots form, I stick it in soil. You do not want to root succulents in water, though. I will say that. They don't want that. Leaf cuttings, you can cleanly remove an entire leaf, and you'll see up here in these top pictures from the stem. Lay it on a slightly damp succulent mix and use a spray bottle to keep the soil surface damp but not wet. And then you'll see those tiny little cute rosettes. Now you can do that, or when you're growing say a bigger plant, it'll just do that kind of on its own. If you don't want to, if you're not comfortable taking a leaf and if you've not had success with this method, if you just buy a plant, like a full grown plant, and you give it great light, it's going to start producing some little babies for you that you can just grab off yourself. Okay, so these are some of the crafts that I was talking about that I make. The pumpkin over there, that's not one that I did. That's actually one from Better Homes and Gardens that I saw in a magazine a long time ago that inspired me to do them because I thought it looked so cool. And those are all hot glued on there. You just cut the stems off, put hot glue on the bottom and stick it on, and they're happy. And as far as watering, I take a syringe. I make sure everything's well watered before I cut it. Then I take a syringe maybe once a month and just kind of drape it around and dry it off, and they keep going. I've only had great success with that. Now these, with the wreath, a lot of people do it where they poke holes in a moss wreath and then the succulents kind of grow into it. I don't know if it's my patience is not good or I'm just my technique or both, but I've had a really hard time getting those to stay in the moss wreath form. So I just, again, cut them, hot glue them, and go from there.
So it's not soil at all, it's baby.
No. You guys ask about the pumpkin soil, no. And you will all the time, you'll see people sell like pumpkins that are like pumpkin planters that have plants in them that have soil. If you're using a real pumpkin, it's going to rot and not last very long. I much prefer this method because my pumpkins will last for months. I've taken these like after the holiday and put them just kind of around my grow lights, just kind of nearby where I have other plants. And in March, I'll take off the top, just like all in one clump of moss with all the succulents on top. And the pumpkin's still good because if you've kept it, pumpkins keep. Take the plants off and then keep them going. So no, there's no soil involved whatsoever. Yeah. Okay, this is something else you can do. Of course, these little, the balls, when it comes to the balls or like the wreath forms, I have a hard time. I just hot glue. I can't ever get them stuck in there properly. With the frame, it's a very similar thing too. It's not going to last forever, but if you want a pretty look for a few months, you've got it. And then you can always take them off and put them in soil and allow them to grow roots. So you're not wasting the plant. So cacti. What are cacti? They're closely related to succulents. All cacti are considered succulents, but not all succulents are considered cacti. So remember that. They're in their own botanical family, while succulents refers to plants that exist across many different types of families. They generally have few or no leaves, which you probably already know. They usually have needle-like spines. They have indentations along their spines where the spines grow. They're mostly native to the Americas, and they require a lot of light. So you're not going to find many cacti that don't want a lot of light. The benefits of growing them are similar to any plant. They're great for people who don't have a lot of time to give attention to their plants. They don't have time to, it's not like a photonia. If you've ever grown a nerve plant, you know that they want their water regularly and they will wilt immediately. This is not going to happen. If you have a cactus and you watered it and you don't think about it for another month or two, as long as it's getting appropriate light, it's going to be fine. Also, just the look of being surrounded by plants is very good for our mental well-being. We don't realize that, we don't think about it, but it's something that gives our brain a sense of calm and peace. So how to care for cacti, very similar. It wants that fast draining soil media. It wants that bright light up to 12 hours per day. It may need water weekly in summer. It depends on your climate. Like, so here in Georgia, when it's super duper hot, like we get really blazing hot here, just blazing sun, it might need to have its soil watered every week. Obviously, when you're getting into fall or when you're in spring, it's not going to need that. So you're going to pay attention to the environment and the weather and tailor it to that. In the wintertime, maybe once every month and a half, it's indoors and you give it a little water. You're not going to, you don't want to overwater it. And then 2 to 3 times fertilizing during the growing season. It's also good to kind of scale it back to make your plant hardier. So they need containers with a drainage hole. Clay is always best, better than ceramic, better than plastic. They like low humidity, so your low humidity, dry indoor air is perfect for them. Water at the soil level, so don't pour water over the actual cactus itself. It does not want to be wet. You don't want to be spraying water at this green or these spines. You want to put it right on the soil, kind of like, I think of it like when I water my hydrangeas. If I put water on the leaves, they're going to get all spotted and they're going to get, all kinds of fungus, and they'll still be alive, but they'll just look terrible. Water at the soil level. Don't let it sit in water, only water when it's completely dry. So it's all kind of common sense once you get to know your succulents and cacti. So the bunny ears cactus, I really like this one. A cat for it up, unfortunately, and the air succulent, the cacti succulent soil, let it dry out, humidity. It likes the cooler temperatures of 50 to 65 degrees, very little water during winter. You can break off those cactus pads and propagate that way. So if you're getting a lot of these cute little pads, these little bunny ears, and you want to make some more to maybe give to a friend or whatever you want to do, you just break off that cactus pad, set it down, kind of let it callus over, and you put it in some soil and give it some good light, and there you go. Just especially make sure that you don't overwater a new propagule or a new plant you're trying to propagate. They're more susceptible because they're small. If you give them too much water, they're really going to suffer. Whereas if you give a little too much water to a huge plant, it's not going to be as impactful. But you have a small little propagule that you're trying to get started and you get that soil too wet, it's just going to rot it right out of there. So keep that in mind. Wear protective gloves when handling. So that kind of goes without saying. If your hands are sensitive, you don't want to go up and give this thing a hug or squeeze it. You want to wear some protective gloves. The star cactus, which is really popular. I see this a lot. To me, it looks like a pin cushion with those little pins like for sewing. That's what I always think of when I see it. Native to Southwest. Where your child goes up and touches this, you're not going to hurt yourself. Divided into 8 ribs, dotted with those small little white tufts of hair like structures called trichomes. I call them little pins for pin cushions. They stay compact. They will flower. They open during the day and close at night, so they are diurnal. Blooms during spring and summer, but that will be dependent on light. So if you're not giving this thing enough light, it's not going to bloom, which really kind of goes for any blooming plant. A blooming plant wants light. Needs the warm temperatures and the bright sunlight. It's non-toxic to humans and pets, so if you have a child or a pet who messes with plants, they won't kill themselves. You give it that low nitrogen cactus fertilizer, good to give them, out of reduced strength, and then use neem oil to treat mealybugs, scale insects, and spider mites. So this is a really nice one, the rat tail cactus. You'll see this a lot in nurseries in the summertime. People like to put them in a lot of interesting planters. So the head planters, they're great for that. Any type of head planter, anything that you can do that's kind of unusual with this, it'll really set it off. Native to Mexico, likes the bright indirect light. Water it when soil is dry, and always make sure you see that water drain out. Don't let it sit in there. Can get 3 to 6 feet. When it's fully grown, loves the warm temperatures. Flowers nicely in spring. Reduced water and cooler temperatures to encourage blooms in spring. So it's kind of a thing where if it's not getting those cooler temperatures and that reduced water in winter, it may not bloom for you in spring. So kind of think of it as you do, some of your other plants like poinsettias who need a little extra care to be prompted to go into that cycle. Propagate by seed or cuttings, non-toxic, but occasion, if you've ever felt this, it's got kind of a funny feel. It doesn't hurt, but it's just got a funny little texture to it. And if you're sensitive skinned, it might irritate your skin. The feather cactus is native to Mexico. It has that low, dense form covered in the white feathery spines, long hairs. They're like a bird's feather. They're pretty cute, I think. Those feathers protect them against that harsh desert sun. They can be in full sun or bright indirect light. Water sparingly, and again, with this one, you want to make sure you're watering at the soil level. Don't be pouring water on top of the actual plant itself. Does not want that. Feed it with the typical succulent and cacti fertilizer, and it'll bloom with the creamy white or pale pink scented flowers in late summer if you have treated it well. If you have it and it does not bloom, then just know that you need to give it a little more of what it wants next year. The moon cactus, native to desert areas of South America. This one only lives for 2 or 3 years because it's made from a grafting method. You'll see these I see them at Walmart and the big box stores really more than I see them in nurseries, but they come in all those different colors. It's not a single cactus. As I said, it's a grafted cactus, so it's got a colored albino cactus on top grafted to another cactus on the bottom. And so you want to make sure when you get one of these, it's got that full moon on top. Don't just go by the color. Actually really look at the health of the plant because they're not all the same. Sometimes you'll see a pretty color, but when you really look at the plant, it doesn't look healthy. You want that full ball at the top. You don't want any signs of pest or disease. You don't want shriveled or wrinkled the stem or spine. It wants that bright indirect light. It wants sparse watering. It's not always in bloom, of course, and as I said, only lives 2 to 3 years because it's a grafted cactus. So don't think you did something wrong when it dies because it wasn't meant to live more than 2 or 3 years. The bishop's cap, I think this is such a cool cactus. I'd love to have one. Native to northern Mexico. It's spineless and it has that columnar silvery gray stem. Has a perfect star shape with 5 prominent ribs. It can increase though to 8 to 10 ribs in time. Gets 8 to 40 inches tall, which I think would be really cool to see one person like that. Full sun to light shade. There are several of my succulents and cacti that I definitely start out on my shaded patio because you never want to, when you take your plants from indoors to outdoors for the spring, you never want them in the sun. They will get all kinds of spots, just like people. We can't just go right from being indoors to right outside and we're going to get burned. Same with the plant. Sparingly, needs to be dry in the wintertime, just leave it alone. Fertilize sparingly, half strength, and then this is one that received the Royal Horticultural Society Award of Garden Merit, so it's very popular with horticultural people. And the San Pedro, it's very popular as a houseplant these days, native to the Andes Mountains of South America. Bluish green, fleshy stems with small clusters. See, slow growing indoors. So this thing will, you won't be able to see it grow. It's going to take forever, but it likes that full sun, the south facing window, wants the well-drained soil, of course, reduce watering winter months. You want to give it the environment when you figure out where it's from and what the weather is like where it's from. You want to try to mimic that. So I'm venturing to guess that in the Andes Mountains, it hardly gets any water in the winter time. So you want to do the same thing. Only fertilize when it's growing. And then I think I mentioned this the last time I did this class, but it contains mescaline, which is a hallucinogen that can result in euphoric feelings and many other effects. But it's rarely grown for that by horticulturists and hobbyists. Some purchase the cactus for spiritual or religious significance. So just know that this can get you high, I guess. I don't recommend it, but it is one of the things about that plant.
Nicole?
Yes.
Does the altitude of growing up in the mountains prevent you from growing at a level?
So we had somebody ask about the altitude and if that would prevent from growing it at this level. And honestly, I'm not sure. I know people do grow these in our region. They probably have to just be extra careful of the dryness and, the different conditions and basically see how it responds. I've not grown one personally myself. Question?
I have many things in my home.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
But like huge.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we have a member of our audience who says they have several of these at home. So that's interesting to know. And you obviously live in Georgia. Where do you live?
If it's one
Swanee Loop.
inside in the winter and
Okay.
outside in this time. When support when it's raining,
Mm-hmm.
3 days it's better. Like in Georgia, sometimes it's the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
They put no more raining.
Okay. Okay. So she says she brings it indoors in the winter. She puts it outside for summer. If it rains every once in a while, it's okay. But if we're getting, monsoon rains for a week, you don't want to leave this thing sitting out in all that rain. You want to bring it in. So that's ceramic plants that are pots that don't have drainage holes and they were full of water. So they're kind of drying right now in the dry cycle. So the golden barrel cactus, native to North America, grows up to 3.5 feet in ideal conditions, needs the well-draining soil, the sparse water, of course, no water in if it's coming from a region, needs that full sun, the south facing window. It can bloom, but it typically won't bloom until the plant is 15 years old. I've encountered so many plants. I say so many. I've encountered several plants that I've had, and I thought, why aren't they blooming? And I figure out it's because some of these plants just won't. They just won't until they get to be a certain age. So something to keep in mind. A phosphorus-rich fertilizer during the growing season. So that's that NPK. It's the P. Rarely needs pruning, of course. I don't know how you really prune that thing. Can be moved outdoors when the night temperatures are above 65. So that's something else to keep in mind. When I put some of these plants outside, even though I was putting some of my other tropicals outdoors a little earlier, I waited longer on my succulents and cacti because if the temperatures, say it was warm in the day, but it was getting still down to 50 degrees, they're just not going to like that. You may as well just wait and hold off until it's typically, temperatures are steadily above 65. And if you're going to have some wet weather, like our guest mentioned, bring them in. They don't want to be out there in soaking storm. They can handle some rain, but not a monsoon. Okay, so where to buy? Local plant nurseries like Pike, Petal and Pond, My Secret Garden, Growers Outlet has a lot. Of course, the big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart. For online, I suggest Mountain Crest Gardens. That is a great one. They have a great variety, very good prices. Succulent box. Mentioned was Etsy. If you go, Etsy's become better and better as far as their variety and their quality and their prices, as far as offering these. You get a really nice variety of people growing, you get a lot of growers like in Florida or in California who have the natural environment for these, and they will send you plants for a really good price. Especially if you order from somebody who's shipping from Florida, it's going to get here very quickly. You don't have to worry about it sitting in a box forever. So that's a little, if you order online, keep in mind. The GCMGA plant sale, which we just had recently, is a good one. The Gwinnett Tech plant sale, and then the Southeast Plant Show. So the GCMGA and the Gwinnett Tech are done. Those happen in April, but the Southeast Plant Show is coming up in June. It's always the last weekend in June. And so even if you're not big into these types of plants, I implore you to go and look at everything because it's so cool. And come by our booth as well. Oops, sorry. This is an Aeonium Black Witch, one of my favorites. I love when I can get these and put it in one of my fall or Halloween displays. I think they're just amazing to look at. That's Pink Witch with the pink, and then the Greenovia, also called a rose succulent. It looks just like a rose. A lot of people these days are using these as bridal favors, I've noticed. So you can go online and buy just, a case or set of these Greenovia cuttings. They don't have any roots or just the heads. And brides are putting them, I guess, on favors or for decorations. And they're really cute and a fun way to use a unique thing for your guests, I guess, at a wedding, something that they will appreciate. So that's all I have for online or for the virtual. And then for in person, I have several succulents here for people to look at. And then I have cuttings for you to take. So Lisa, can you tell me, do we have any questions before we end? Where's Lisa? If she's been texting me, I've not been watching it because I've been looking at my presentation. Let's see. Lisa, do we have any questions? She says can't. Okay. Hold on a second. Oh, I'll have to read them. Okay. Let me look in the chat here. Are all types of aloes medicinal? Well, I'm honestly not sure. I've not heard of aloes that aren't medicinal. If you get an aloe, hybrid or cultivar, it might have reduced medicinal benefits because it has been bred differently. So I would look into that first. I would look up your specific aloe. I'm thinking of the ones that are meant to grow like really short and not very fleshy stems, and maybe they wouldn't be ideal for that use. So I would look it up if you have a different type of aloe that you have a question about. Okay, in crafting using hot glue, do you put glue over the entire stem end or just around the stem? So when I'm using hot glue on these, I'm cutting the stem completely off. I'm basically cutting the head off of the plant. So I'm cutting that flower part, that rosette, whatever I'm using, and I'm putting glue around the bottom of it and gluing it flat against whatever surface, the pumpkin or whatever makes sense. Do you know what the name is of this plant and care for it? Okay, my eyes are not great at looking at small pictures, so let me see if I can make it bigger. Come on. Oh, I didn't do it. If I can't see it very well on this, I'll look at it when I get to my desk and I will message you back. Where's the thing? Let's see here. I can't necessarily tell what I'm looking at. Sorry, I don't have my readers with me, but I'll get back to you. So as far as getting the slides, yes, I will be sending this out probably next week. We'll send that as a PDF. And then I have several prickly pear cactus in the ground, any specific care for the winter. So, I have neighbors who have these, and I always see, I've never grown one outdoors year round myself, so I can't give a personal account, but I have seen other people who have them and they don't seem to do anything to them. They just leave them as they are. I'm sure that if we're having a freeze or watch where it's getting super, super cold, they probably cover them. I don't know, and that's even the smart thing to do. I should have covered my hydrangeas this year whenever we had our late frost because I lost all those buds. The plant is still alive. I say that to say that I've seen them in people's yards and I've not seen anything specific, but it's probably always a good idea whenever we're getting extreme weather, extreme cold, to cover your plants just to give it the best chance. So if there are no other questions, then thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. And Lisa, I'm going to hang up and let you go. Did you remember to record? Because of course I did not. I'm sure. Share and in the call. Thank you all for joining me. And next week I will be sending